The face mask, the most visible symbol of England's restrictions-free approach to COVID. England has one of the highest case rates in Europe, yet there's no legal obligation to wear a mask on public transport and most indoor areas. It's an approach that sets it apart from the rest of the UK and much of Western Europe.
I always put mine on the train and going into shops, and I'd prefer it if other people did, and there seem to be a lot of people, especially on the trains nowadays, that don't.
I work on public transport, so I think it should be on. We should be wearing them. But obviously, powers that be have decided it's down to the individual.
Nobody should be forced to do something within a private matter, and health obviously is a private matter.
I try not to use my mask because I don't feel very comfortable. I used to, but now after 3 years, we should really stop using masks, I think.
It's currently up to the individual to decide whether they'd like to wear a mask. And yet in one recent survey, the public said they'd rather be told. 81% of people said they'd like to see mandatory mask wearing enforceable on public transport. So why isn't it? Well, that goes to the heart of government.
The divide over masks is as clear in Parliament as it is in public, with more masks on the opposition benches than among the governing Conservative Party. The Prime Minister himself came under fire this week after he was pictured visiting a hospital, at points without a mask. And accusations that the government is setting a bad example are growing louder.
We've had record numbers of infections in Parliament, including recently the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer. So I think it's very irresponsible and arrogant of the mainly Conservative MPs. They're setting a very bad example to the public. They're setting a very bad example to the rest of the people in Parliament.
The government says it's focusing its efforts on its vaccine and booster jab campaign. And while cases are high, hospitalisations and deaths are considerably lower than previous waves. But with fatalities in the UK averaging over 150 a day, the government's under pressure to bring back masks and social distancing.
It is simply unacceptable to have the equivalent of a jumbo jet crashing every 2 or 3 days in terms of the number of deaths. So we cannot rely on this vaccine-only strategy. Face coverings work. We can see that the countries that use them have much lower rates than we have.
The government is yet to rule out a return of mandatory masks, and as we enter into winter, it will be up to ministers to decide if and when high case numbers become too high. But after months of being told masks aren't legally required, will the public and the politicians be persuaded to put them back on?